How to avoid getting taken by the market. Honestly, you just can't. The only way we can avoid getting taken advantage of and lied to blatantly, we can't avoid getting lied to blatantly, but the only ammunition we have against believing bullshit is our rationality, but also our purchasing power. So, I was thinking along the lines here of how ads prey on the people, prey on the weak, prey on vulnerable, mostly prey on insecurity. And I thought back and I thought, you know, if you were to step back 2,000 years in time to ancient Rome, you could be walking along the street and you might run across a guy on the corner who's trying to sell you chicken skulls, which may be claimed to help with certain conditions if placed over your fireplace, whatever it might be. The idea that snake oil salesmen came from actually selling snake oil as a cure-all, and how even today, in the modern atmosphere where we have more education on things, we have a little more scientific evidence that things do or don't work, we've found that that doesn't really matter. That people are going to choose to believe what they want, and they will continue to purchase things that they feel, whether they work or not, you know, subjectivity as well as placebo effect seem to be a major component of people's idea of what's important and what matters. Anyhow, off subject there, but there's an old, you know, the old saying you'll hear is caveat emptor, which I believe is, I think it's Latin, right? Must be Latin. It means buyer beware. And so we're always told, hey, if you go out and you buy some special wand that's supposed to, you know, for $5,000 that's supposed to, you know, align your chakras, which is something I saw the other day, or it was $4,000. If you believe it works and you want to purchase it, then that's your choice. It is a buyer beware market, but we can't always assume that people should know better. In other words, it's our duty to look out for one another. If an individual buys something they think works, it is up to us as their neighbors to say, well, you know, make sure that you aren't getting ripped off. And, you know, that's why there's so many family issues with people who spend money on things that, you know, drain their bank account hoping for some, you know, whether spiritual breakthrough or some product's going to help them live forever. Because aging is a huge one, you know, preyed upon because we get old and we die, and that's how it is. So, in order for caveat emptor, or buyer beware, to work, we have to have the proper information first. Trendy foods are something that we see pop up all the time, for example. You know, one week it's goji berries, and, you know, years ago it was, ginkgo biloba, and, you know, I watched all these things come and go, and eventually some of them are found to be harmful in large doses, and some of them are found to not do anything. It's really irrelevant. It's the way that we latch on to whatever's new, whatever's great. And just because you can invent something or create something new doesn't mean you should. And that's something that I think we're learning as a society. They have what you call a paradox of choice now, where it's difficult to even choose what we want because there's so many options. But it is a normal part of life to be treated as different, or to feel insecure, or to feel awkward when you're, say, making a speech or, you know, going out in public. It is a normal part of life to have moments where you don't quite feel 100%, you know, as you fit in. But those are preyed upon big time. And that's how, you know, the pharmaceutical industry makes a fortune off of that. Like the video I made yesterday regarding, you know, antipsychotic medication. I was actually shocked to learn that there's no science behind neurochemistry, or at least that these drugs and how they operate and how they really work. It's even worse than I thought in a lot of ways. But for that example, those are medicines that people actually need to take, or think they need. So therefore, we're at the mercy once again of being an educated buyer. So another good example I heard was, you know, toothpaste, for example. You know, the companies who originally promoted toothpaste had to convince people first that they had stinky breath. And a lot of people do have stinky breath. But up till then, people could just brush their teeth with water or baking soda or whatever they chose. On top of that, deodorant, for example. I don't use deodorant, and I don't hardly ever smell. But if I use deodorant, or antiperspirant specifically, then I'll start sweating worse. And I've seen my friend and myself get cysts in your armpits from the aluminum zirconium that's in those bars. But everybody wears deodorant, right? Everybody needs antiperspirant, because they showed all the guys at the meeting with their arms raised, and oh, they were embarrassed. And, you know, we make normal parts of human life seem disgusting, and therefore you always need some sort of a cure for it. Cosmetics and creams, and the women's industry is just out of control. How women are told, hey, get rid of that wrinkle, you know, you need to look good. My God, injecting Botox into your face? Botox is a toxin. It's a botulinum toxin right there in the name of it. You're injecting a toxin into your face to stop your face from doing what it naturally does because you think it makes you sexier or it'll help get rid of your wrinkles. To me, I guess I can only go by a guy's viewpoint. I think that, you know, when I see an older woman who embraces she's got silver hair, you know, and that natural radiant beauty, I think that that's awesome, you know. To me, it just looks desperate when somebody who's 75 is completely decked down in cosmetics and, you know, but to each their own. I'm just saying how, from a guy's point, you know, from my standpoint, that should not be something to bash women who do these things, but rather those who feel like they should have to, don't just because you think that everyone else is, you know, needs you to look a certain way. It's hard to watch because I grew up as a pretty aware person in my life. I think I was pretty aware of the world around me, but today at 43 I'm learning that I didn't know shit. That every day I'm learning something new. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned in the not marketing but advertising side of things is FOMO is a modern term that's used for that, and you've probably heard it. FOMO is fear of missing out. And that has been used against us since the beginning of time. You have to buy this stock now, or you have to buy this, you know, buy into this now, or get this before. It's a limited sale. Look at Black Friday, and oh, if you get in here, we only have 40 of these, you know, and that's used against us. The question, I think, because I never post something without my personal solution. You know, when I make videos, I don't sit and complain about how things are, unless I have some sort of an opinion on how to deal with it. And in this case, my opinion is the best way to deal with advertising is to, well, beyond the obvious, is use your purchasing power properly and only buy things that you actually need. It's pretty damn simple. I mean, question if you're making a large purchase. If you're buying a new car, why? You could buy a used car. If you want to buy a new car, buy a new car. But ask yourself why you're paying more for the premium of the honor to get something brand new, or why we feel like we even need this device at all. I'm still shocked that people stand in line waiting for a new iPhone when it comes out. And I'm even more shocked that people do it when they already have a phone. An iPhone from, you know, what is this idea that we have to have the latest and the greatest gadgets? Well, to each his own, once again. But we're made to feel like if we're not on top of the gadget world, or if we don't have what others have, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, it's been used against us forever. And so, as far as the advertising side itself, there really aren't many solutions to not get advertised to, except I would say, first off, cancel cable and don't watch regular television. I mean, that's an obvious one. I have not missed commercials a single bit. I do not listen to the radio. I use Firefox and use ad blocker all the time on my browser, and it gets rid of a majority of ads. And when I go to a website that says, oh, can you disable ad blocker? I just leave the website. I feel like the future is going to, you know, if you look at some of the pages where marketers and advertisers talk about, you know, how to market, because when I've Googled these things, because I've done research on this in the past, and generally I come across websites and forums with marketers themselves, or advertisers themselves rather, saying, how do we market to these kids? How do we market to the new generation? You know, it's always been ludicrous. I mean, even when I was a kid, smoking was still considered cool, you know, and today we know better, but not before millions of us were addicted to tobacco. Ended up going to vaping, but eventually I'll quit that. So anyhow, those are just my thoughts on this. It's really bad when it's so invasive and insidious, the way that they interject advertising into music, namely rap and modern hip-hop, or pop songs, the way that what we call influencers now, marketing influencers. Some people don't realize that if a famous person goes to their Twitter account and tweets something about their day and said, oh yeah, I was just wearing my Nikes down to the beach, that's considered advertising. They get paid up to $1 million or $500,000, some of these people, for one post about a specific item. They can make a lot of money doing that. And it'd be so hard to turn that down if you're famous, right? So I guess the point being that never ever buy something just because someone you respect or admire and you know, that's famous buys it, because they probably don't even use it. So I'm probably preaching to the choir on a lot of this, but I want people to be informed. I want a generation to grow up where they can just laugh off the BS, you know, laugh off the games, freemium games, where they pull you into some free game and then, oh, you've got to buy the coins. I mean, I've got young kids and I know how they fall into that, and I'm teaching them to be aware. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So ultimately, it really does come down to a very simple kind of almost Buddhist type principle of having no desires. And it doesn't mean you can't enjoy yourself, but that's for a whole other conversation. So don't be a sucker. Don't get taken by buying things that you can't afford and don't need, because this makes more of an empowered consumer that realize that nothing, you can never buy happiness. God, there's so many cliche topics on this subject. So anyhow, I'll leave it at that. I'll talk to y'all later. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you all soon.